Hello and welcome back to the YouTube studio here at the Munich Security Conference. I'm Jack Kelly from TLDR News, and this time I'm joined by Valdis Dombrovskis from who is the European Commission's Executive Vice President for an Economy that Works for People and also the Trade Commissioner. Very nice to meet you.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to start with the fact that you have quite an interesting job title. You have a couple of titles there. And firstly on that, do you think that the European economy does work for people at the moment?
Well, I do think so, and I would say that that's actually one of the key points for the EU, the social economy market model which we are having, that it's indeed important to preserve and strengthen this model, because I think it provides indeed a good balance in terms of work and life and social protection. So it's something which we need to nurture and advance.
Which elements of that do you think are particularly important? There's obviously a lot going on in the European economy. Which parts need to be optimized in order to ensure that it does work for everyone?
Well, first of all, obviously, right now we are facing many challenges in EU economy, with Russia's aggression against Ukraine, with supply chain disruptions, with elevated energy prices, even though that is correcting right now. So clearly, we need to address all of those elements. So on one hand, it's important to address short-term challenges. On the other hand, to work on EU's long-term competitiveness, because there are also a number of structural factors which affects it, including slower productivity growth than in other major economies like US and China, including population aging, including the energy challenges that you mentioned. So we need to address those structural challenges to preserve EU's competitiveness, because EU's competitiveness is actually the basis for economic growth and also for prosperity. And we need to couple it with further work on our European pillar of social rights. So we need to see progress on both economic and social side.
And obviously you referenced there the geopolitical situation at the moment. There's some major changes geopolitically and economically, and obviously that impacts trade in a significant way. And as such, we're seeing terms thrown around like onshoring, reshoring, friendshoring, decoupling, deglobalization. And all of this talk kind of implies a major rethink when it comes to trade and the global economy. What do you think of this new direction of travel? And do you think that we're entering into an era of deglobalization?
Well, first of all, it's clear that there is a paradigm shift from effectiveness and efficiency to resilience.
Yes.
That is something which is happening. So on all the terms which you mentioned, I could add de-risking, also lots of work on the economic security questions. This is something which is happening, and I would say looking at current conflictual geopolitical landscape, it's no wonder that all of this work is happening. So what is important in this is actually to find the right balance between efficiency and resilience, and to prevent the fragmentation of the global economic system, because indeed this risk is there, and there are estimates that if we allow this economic fragmentation to take place and trade concentrating within certain geopolitical blocks, that would have a long-term effect of removing something between 5 to 7% of the global GDP. And that's equivalent, like the 7% roughly, to Germany and France's combined GDP from the world economy. So certainly that's something which we need to preserve. And for this is very important to preserve multilateral rules-based trading system, and well, I would say also like a global multilateral rules-based system. So that's why we are engaged from the EU side on preserving this multilateral system. That's why we are emphasizing that we remain open for trade, and actually our trade trade openness, with EU being actually global trading powerhouse, is one of the sources of our economic strengths. Also, if we look from the EU perspective, in the next decade, around 85%, 90% of global growth will take place outside the EU. So we need to be connected to this external source of growth. Which means that when we discuss topics like economic security, it needs to be done in a precise and targeted way. So we need to assess what are the risks and how to precisely address them, so that this work on economic security and other aspects on resilience does not become a pretext for protectionism.
Absolutely. And you're referencing other kind of outside of the EU, other sources of growth and other partnerships. And one obvious and potentially difficult partnership there is with China. And you've emphasized in the past that the EU has no intention of decoupling from China. But equally, you have highlighted a number of areas of concern, things like subsidy disputes, market access, data flows, anti-espionage laws. How do you think the EU balances those genuine concerns against a need to have a beneficial economic relationship with China?
Indeed, China is EU's second largest trading partner, so obviously this is an important relationship for us to deal with. And that's where this word I already mentioned, de-risking, comes in. We continue to engage with China, while also making sure that we are not developing strategic dependencies from China. This is something which we learned also in a hard way with strategic dependency we had on Russian fossil fuel, especially natural gas supplies, which we had to deal with in 2022, which we did, but it was also economically costly. So now when we move to the green and digital economy, it requires different inputs, and it's important again that we are not having strategic dependencies on one supplier. And actually, for quite a few of those inputs, rare earths and so on, China is a dominant supplier right now. That's why it's important that we are diversifying our supplies, and that's why we keep strengthening our engagement with partners around the world. And another topic when we discuss economic relationship with China, yes, it's important economic relationship, but it's also very unbalanced. So in 2022, we had almost 400 billion euros trade deficit with China. Which is obviously of that order of magnitude that it raises concerns and that it needs to be addressed. That's indeed why when engaging with our Chinese counterparts, also in last autumn we had our high-level economic and trade dialogue, we were emphasizing a lot the market access barriers and focusing on practical steps to address them, to also rebalance our economic relationship.
And obviously, not being over-dependent on any specific economy or region is massively important, as you say. And one other region that the EU has spent a lot of time looking towards is South America, with the roughly 20-year-long negotiations with Mercosur. That agreement, that discussion seems to have languished over the last few years. And at this point, it seems like an idea of a deal is maybe dead there. Do you think that is the case, or could it be revived, some kind of partnership?
Well, first of all, this work on the Mercosur agreement continues, and we continue our engagement with Mercosur counterparts.
Yeah.
So what we are doing, we are focusing on sustainability aspects of the agreement, while obviously being mindful of sensitive agricultural sectors which EU needs to protect.
Are you optimistic that an agreement could be reached there?
Well, in any case, we are working on this. Obviously, we know that it's a controversial debate also within the EU, with different member states expressing different positions, with France coming in quite critically, with Germany and Spain, on the other hand, actually coming with a strong support for the agreement. And actually, the large majority of EU member states is supporting that we continue to work on this agreement.
Moving to North America, the US's Inflation Reduction Act went down quite badly with European businesses when it was first announced, due to concerns about the potential impact of American subsidies and how that would affect European businesses in comparison. About a year and a half has passed since that was first implemented, and I'm curious what you think the impact has been on Europe and if those initial concerns have come to fruition.
Indeed, there were concerns, and we still have concerns of discriminatory provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act, which are, in a sense, discriminatory vis-à-vis EU companies. And, well, not only EU, but in our case, obviously, that's what we are focusing on. And it's something what we are addressing in our discussions with US counterparts. We had I would say half a satisfactory solution as regards electrical vehicles with a broad interpretation of meaning of commercial vehicle. We keep our discussions on critical minerals agreement, which would provide as a non-discriminatory access and avoid fragmentation also in this area of raw materials. We're also looking at other ways to approach our cooperation on greening our respective economies. So recently we launched a transatlantic initiative on sustainable trade with the ambition of actually creating a transatlantic green marketplace. And from that point of view, obviously it's important to remove obstacles which lead to the fragmentation. It's clear that we'll be better off that if EU and US would address climate change challenges together, not against each other.
Later today at the conference, you're speaking on a panel which discusses building a comprehensive recovery plan for Ukraine. And I'm curious what you think about the EU's role in that regard when it comes to rebuilding Ukraine and assisting Ukraine from a trade perspective.
Well, from the EU side, we are willing to play a leading role. We already is the largest donor to Ukraine. Just recently, we reached agreement on a 50 billion euros Ukraine facility now for nearest 4 years. But obviously it's important to have support also from other international donors, and first and foremost US. So clearly we continue our engagement also with US counterparts to remind of urgency and importance of actually reaching agreement on the US support, but also with other players, with G7 countries and so on. So and we have set up the multi-donor coordination platform for Ukraine recovery, which is exactly there to coordinate work on different donors, EU, G7, international financial institutions, and other countries which are contributed, providing substantial contributions. So, this work right now is ongoing. As regards our Ukraine facility, it has now both components. It has a component to finance Ukraine's immediate needs, because there is a large financing gap which we need to close for Ukraine this year. According to IMF estimates, it's about $41 billion. And also start working on the reconstruction.
Absolutely. Finally, the theme of this year's Munich Security Conference is lose-lose, referring to the growth of zero-sum thinking in geopolitics, trade, and other areas. Do you think that's a fair assessment of what we're seeing at the moment? And if so, how do you think we break out of a zero-sum mindset?
Certainly the risks are there. We already discussed the risk of global economic fragmentation, and from the EU side we are committed to work to minimize it to the extent possible, to tackle the geopolitical tensions which we are facing at the moment. So we're not talking about decoupling from anyone, well, except Russia, but Russia, which its aggression against Ukraine and kind of this aggressive imperialist approach they have now taken clearly is a different story. So there we need to focus actually on providing all necessary support to Ukraine so that it can actually defend itself and win this war, and continuing to isolate Russia and making sure that it pays for damages it's creating in Ukraine.
Absolutely. It's been great speaking with you. I look forward to hearing more of your thoughts about the Ukraine situation in your panel later, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.